Hello, YouTube friends. Welcome back to my channel. James here, and today we're going to be talking about the current earnings disaster unfolding over at Medium.com. Now, it would be a tough week to be an employee at Medium. One day you're sitting by the pool at your house roasting hot dogs, and the next day you're being screamed at by an endless string of enraged writers who've seen their pay disintegrate overnight. Now, over the course of about a year and a half, Medium has gone from somewhere where you could actually credibly make a living as a writer full-time to a complete disaster over the past week or so. Now, last week, the site's VP of content, Scott Lamb, wrote a post explaining that Medium was suspending a bunch of partner program accounts and tweaking its algorithm to reward genuine human beings. The only problem is the tweet completely turned off the earnings spigot for just about everyone. Now, Lamb's post has about 1,100 replies, and most of them are along the lines of, "What on earth have you done?" Stories that should be earning many dollars are now earning very few cents, and it's been radio silence pretty much from the executive team for the past few days, other than, dipping into the comments here and there. No formal kind of statement or anything explaining what's going on. So that leaves writers scrambling into each other's stories looking for possible replies from Medium executives. And there have been a couple of those so far, which we'll get to in a few moments. But let's talk about what's actually going on with the earnings. Now, what I've been able to figure out so far is that this mostly seems to be affecting stories that were published in January. Now, if you take a look at my partner program earnings, so these are my top 3 stories. 2 of them were published, these are my top 3 stories for this month. So we're talking January. Now, 2 were published in October and 1 was published in December, and they're all still earning at about the same rate as they were in mid-December. Now, those numbers were already falling in December, but we'll get to that in a minute. But you can see here that these top 3 stories are still earning what is at least somewhere in the ballpark of regular earnings. Now, I've published twice in January, and you can see here that these stories have been absolutely annihilated. So if you look at the top one there, 3 best and 3 worst U.S. states to retire to, just to put in perspective, a 4,000 view story like that, a couple of months ago, this would have earned $80. And a couple of years ago, before the disastrous changes in August 2023 to the partner program, this would have earned about $250. And now apparently it's worth $4. So part of me wants to believe that this is some terrible glitch that's happened and it'll be sorted out as quickly as possible, because the disparity with the publication dates just doesn't really make any sense to me. Now, having said that, earnings have been on sort of the downslope for a long time already on Medium. And if you're a subscriber to me on Medium or at my Substack called Publish Every Day, you'll know already that I noticed something fishy about earnings in late December. So my RPM, or revenue per 1,000 views, has been on a consistent downslope for a year. But in late December, it kind of fell off a cliff. Now, I just want to add a little caveat here. Now, if a Medium person looked at this, they would say, well, James, views don't really count. It's about reads for members. Yeah, I get all that. I wouldn't use this number if all my stories didn't behave in pretty much the same way. So pretty much every one of my stories is a 4 to 5 minute read. And it gets 80 plus retention, which is, I would put my average retention up against almost anyone at Medium for every story. So nothing's really changed with what I do or who's reading my stories. So I just wanted to throw that out there before I get a comment saying, well, maybe most of your traffic is coming from Google right now. That is just not the case. But anyway, so here's what I wrote. I guess it was back on January 1st. So I wrote, note the big drop off in August 2023. That's when the new Medium Partner Program was introduced. It's funny in retrospect to think about how much everyone was freaking out back then. My RPM that month was $22, which represented a 70% haircut overnight at the time. This month, it'll be $16.91, and over the past 2 days, it's been around $10. I wish I made $22 per 1,000 views again. Now, In early January, it eventually hit a low of close to $8 on RPM before my numbers recovered a little bit. So I'm starting to wonder if maybe this new system of trying to get rid of AI and spammers, maybe they were testing it in January to see what was going on. Because I know if it were me, I wouldn't just flip a switch and turn on something that could potentially kind of destroy the entire site. So perhaps the initial earnings drop was part of that. And I will say, after my RPM went down close to $8, the last 2 days it's been up closer to like 17. But again, that's being hurt by those 2 January stories that are doing good numbers but earning almost nothing. So couple more thoughts on this. Now, I've been one of Medium's most loyal writers for almost 3 years. I've sung its praises as recently as a couple months ago. You guys know, if you're already a subscriber to this channel, I've been a huge fan of Medium literally for years, and I've pumped its tires for a long time. But it's getting a bit tiresome, constantly seeing cuts to writer pay, and I don't want to be overly negative about what's happening right now. If it is a glitch, stuff happens. But that doesn't change the fact that for the past 2 years, and especially the past year, earnings have been on a very consistent downslope. So I wrote my own reply to Scott Lamb's post, and here's what I said. Scott, I've been a top writer on the site for more than 2 years and one of your biggest supporters. I do big numbers, and I've brought in a lot of subscribers over that time. Now, for the most part, I've kept my mouth shut because I know you and the executive team believe you're doing what's best for Medium. I've been patient and hopeful that someone would pick up on the fact that the current pay system is egregious and all your former marquee writers are fleeing or have already fled. I love this place, which is why I've been so worried for the past month. Medium's constant pivots and cuts to writer earnings have been pushing your top writers away for more than a year now, going back to the launch of the new Medium Partner Program in August 2023. Everyone I used to read here has moved over to Substack, and I've started there too because the constant pivots and cutbacks to writer earnings here are so frustrating and demoralizing. And if you want a window into what has happened to your top writers' earnings, I did the math, and that's the graph I was referring to before. And I said, I'm not trying to be antagonistic, but I do genuinely believe that something has to change or the site is in big, big trouble. Substack is aggressively coming for you, and time is short. Again, I love Medium with all my heart, and I want so badly for it to thrive. Now, like I just want to touch on the big writers leaving. So, to me, I can't for the life of me understand how Medium leadership is not freaking out about this. So when I started out, I did a lot more reading on Medium than I do now, and the reason for that is a lot of my favorite writers were very active and promoted on the platform. So we're talking about people like Tim Denning. We're talking about people I read early like Hudson Rennie, people who were big names on the site, AO, Eve Arnold. And over time, as the pay cuts continued, all of these people have been fleeing to Substack. And it's not just a pay thing too. Medium's made some interesting decisions lately around how they promote writers. So just as a small example, it used to be that, my eyes scan writers. I read writers. I don't read publications online. Because you couldn't I wouldn't be able to name what publications Eve or Tim or any of these people were writing in before. But I know their names, and I knew their avatars, and I knew what they wrote. And so the latest thing that Medium has done is they've completely buried the writers. So they switched the avatars and names of the publications to be the first thing you see, and it's hard to just catch your favorite writers at a glance. And to me, it's such a strange decision because I don't read or log into Medium for publications. I log in to to read writers that I like, and people who have a personal brand that appeals to me, that's easy to spot right away. And now you scan it and you're seeing all these random publications with few followers, and people have very short attention spans nowadays. Like, they're not going to squint and try to find the names of the people that they want to read, and for very long, because they're scanning looking for what they want, the writers they want to read. So to me, making it harder to locate those writers, the ones who are still there, because as I said, when all this stuff started happening over the past week with the Medium earnings, I also, like, at the beginning of January, I was like, had enough. And I was like, I'm going to Substack, because, this is like $8 RPM is just not worth it. I mean, I do better than $8 RPM on YouTube, and that's an open platform where people don't even have to pay to use it. And that's the issue with Medium. Medium always had a higher RPM because, subscribers pay money. It's consistent, and so you would expect the RPM to be higher than people who are just looking at something for free. But when the RPM fell to around $8, that's worse than I do on YouTube. So what's the point at that point? Or even with AdSense, what's the point of hiding your stuff behind a paywall if you're going to make more sharing it widely? So that's the issue that Medium runs into if their earnings get too low. People start to wonder, what's the point of limiting the reach of my work if I'm not even going to get paid what's fair for that work? So that's my number one worry going forward with Medium. Now, I do hope they fix this thing. I do hope it turns out to be a glitch. And from the latest comments that somebody managed to dig out, it seems that Medium is a bit confused about what's happened here too. There was a post or a reply from Scott Lamb on a story that says, "Thanks, Roz. I hear you. I know this is frustrating. To answer your question, I'm going to go with another option, which we can call Medium's had a recent unprecedented spike in spam and abuse, and is still working through making sure we've stopped it from happening and that it won't happen again. We also hear you loud and clear about earnings over the last few weeks. We're investigating to understand if and how these are related to the recent spike in abuse, the accounts we've suspended, and changes we've made to earnings calculations. We are working on it, and we will keep you updated. Thank you for your patience." And this is promising if, like me, you're still leaning toward this has to be a glitch theory, because like Medium has to know that if this is the actual new earnings landscape, then the site is pretty much finished, because the last of the credible writers will just leave. And he is right. It is frustrating for writers because, it seems small, perhaps to some of them, but people have come to rely on this pay for their lives, to pay bills and to deal with surprise expenses and that sort of thing. And maybe that's risky or not or whatever, but to have a rug pull that violent and unexpected is very jarring for people. And I do hope that, in the next day or two, Medium will do the right thing and issue an actual explanation and statement and say what they're doing, because not only would it put a lot of people's minds at ease to find out if this is actually just a glitch, but it would also be beneficial to Medium and generate some goodwill at a time when, if you look at what people are writing right now, like, everybody is absolutely ripping this site. So if I were working at Medium, I'd be working on a statement right now saying, this is what's going on. We know it sucks. And if it's true, we're not just going to be paying pennies for 1,000 viewed stories and that sort of thing. This is clearly an issue that we're trying to work out technically. So hopefully that's what happens next. Let me know in the comments, have you been affected by this? Have you not been affected by this? Because I keep hearing rumors that there's a handful of people whose numbers haven't changed at all. And give me your thoughts. Give me your thoughts overall on Medium and the changes over the past year to earnings and that sort of thing. How do you feel about it? Have you changed up any of your activities. So that's it for me today. Please like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll talk to you again soon.